Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Anil Walters from Pivot, and today I'm representing the Pivot Peak Performance Summit. The concept of everyone's dream is to perform at their peak. And today, we're here to help you to achieve that goal and achieve that dream, or turn that dream into a reality. Pivot LLC is what we call a strategic identity development firm. We are engaged in talent development and B2B partnerships. Self-development is the core of our being. We service and have clients that ranges from Centenary University, New York City Football Club, GC Foster College. We are very involved, Tata Communications, how could I forget them? So we're very involved in the space of sports, media, education, self-development. Having had roughly, I'd say 20 years in the field of marketing and 15 years in the field of sports marketing, and I've worked in Jamaica on some of the biggest sports products, both for corporate brands and sports administration. There is a deep passion for development. I believe that the intellectual property of every person is the most valuable currency you could ever spend. And developing your intellectual property, which is your DNA, your creative DNA, can be the greatest asset to identify success in every human being. And today, we're going to bring to you a wide cross-section of speakers that is going to bring that dream to reality. I'm going to invite, at this point in time, our moderator for our session. She's none other than Sharando Farrell, actress, journalist, and very known. She has a film that is now busting up cans, and she's no stranger to the platform of moderating, inspiring. I've known her for a couple of years, from back in the days of radio, and today she's going to take you to the journey of speaking with all our very exciting speakers, our keynote speaker, our local speakers that are very dynamic from different cross-sections and different fields. So stay with us today and also join us again tomorrow when we'll have another set of speakers to inspire you. Thank you very much. Sure.
All right, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are in the world. As O'Neill said, my name is Sharando Farrell, and I get the opportunity to guide you through these proceedings for the next few hours. So when we think of peak performance, for me anyway, when I think of peak performance, I think of being literally at the top of my game. I think of being in a balanced state of mind, body, and spirit. There's a tendency to leave out the spiritual side of our lives. Maybe not so much in Jamaica, but having lived across the globe, there's a tendency to let go of that and focus more on the spiritual, but I mean on the physical. But there's definitely a need for a balance, mind, body, and spirit. And so I am excited for the lineup that we have today, because we do have that kind of balance that we will share with you as we go through the day. And our hope is that when you leave us today, and of course come back tomorrow, you will have gained some more insight as to how you can get to that point of your own personal peak performance thanks to the Pivot brand. Now, we're going to jump right into our keynote speaker. And I was looking over his bio, and I am terribly, terribly, terribly impressed. Extremely impressed, rather, is a better way to put it. So let me tell you a little bit about what I've learned about our keynote speaker. So our keynote speaker is Dr. Dale G. Caldwell, and he's a president of Centenary University in Hackenstown in New Jersey. And he's also the first African American in that role. So, you know, breaking borders, that's what we do. It's what we do as Jamaicans. Under his leadership, the university has increased enrollment and fundraising and created innovative educational programs, providing important new sources of revenue. In March 2024, under his leadership, the university signed the historic Sports Education Partnership with the G.C. Foster College of Physical Education and Sports, which of course is right here in Jamaica in St. Catherine. Now, his bandwidth spreads really wide. His community influence includes him being the pastor of the Covenant United Methodist Church in Plainfield, New Jersey, the author of 8 books, and for the last 5 years in a row has been named one of the 50 most influential people in higher education in New Jersey. Dr. Caldwell attended the Princeton University, the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania, Harvard Graduate School, and I could go on, but I think that really is the epitome. How much higher can you go than that? Well, we'll find out when he speaks with us a little bit more. Ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome on stage Dr. Dale G. Caldwell, who will speak with us about identity and strategic influence.
The first time I've been introduced by an actress. I should be introducing her. And so it is such an honor for me to be here in Kingston, Jamaica, actually one of my favorite places. And I grew up, I came here a few times, and my memories here have just been so wonderful. So I've been asked to, for a few minutes, to really talk about peak performance, strategic influence, and some of the things that I've learned and some of the many different things that I've done throughout my career, throughout my personal and professional life. So the first thing is really this idea of peak performance. You know, peak performance is something that means different things to different people. One of the things that I've learned is that the key for peak performance is for each of you to set your own particular peak performance goal. Peak performance is not the same for everybody. It depends on whether you are looking spiritually, mentally, physically, where you're looking in a particular sport, whether you're looking at your own life. The other thing about peak performance is so often it's used for sports. However, it applies to every aspect of your life. It applies to your spiritual, mental, and physical aspect of your life. So I wanted to be a little personal as I talk today. And so what is peak performance for me? I have always admired those many two-sport athletes, the Bo Jacksons of the world, and some of the others that have been stars in multiple different sports. And so tennis and basketball have been my sport. We'll talk a little bit about that. But I really believe that, and even when I was young, I began to think about what is a good life. You know, what are we called here to be on this earth? Are we called to come to this earth and just have a lot of fun and make a lot of money and have a lot of nice things and then go on to heaven? Or are we called to do more? How do we challenge ourselves? And I grew up around tennis, and so I learned in tennis, and I was competitive a tennis player and got a U.S. national ranking, and I realized that no pain, no gain. I really believe that we've got to push ourselves out of our comfort zone. But we've got to figure out where we're going to do that. And so I did that in the 3 areas that I think are most important: spiritual, mental, and physical. And so what I did is I've set some goals. I've achieved some of those, and I still have some higher goals in each of those areas. Mentally, I had an opportunity, really because of the sacrifice of my parents. I'll talk a little bit about my dad, who marched with Dr. King. I had a chance I lived in Harlem and Roxbury, African-American areas in New York City, but I had a chance to go to predominantly white private schools. So I had a chance to really spend time in both the black community, the all-black community, and virtually all-white schools, and really learned a lot about the fact that people are very much the same. People are very much, no matter what their background is, that they're good at their very nature, that there's good in all of us. I just often say that it sometimes takes a little more digging in some people to find the good, but the good is there. And so spiritually, my dad was a pastor, my grandfather was a pastor, Methodist pastor, my great-grandfather was a Methodist pastor, and my great-great-great-great-grandfather is someone named Bishop Morris Brown, who was the second bishop of the AME Church. Morris Brown College in Atlanta was named after Bishop Morris Brown. So I had this calling in the ministry, and so I became a certified lay minister. And I said, okay, I don't really want to go through and become a minister, but I became a certified lay minister. and I thought I was done. And so some of the things about peak performance is that we've got to look at our life, and we have to look at the opportunities around us. That so often we overlook opportunities, partly because sometimes we don't believe in ourselves, that we don't have the confidence to really go after those opportunities. And so, as I said, I never, ever thought I'd be a pastor of a church. However, I got a call from our district superintendent and bishop to say, Dale, there's a church that we'd love for you to pastor. Turns out, and I didn't know it at the time, that they were looking to close this church. So I said, okay, I'm a certified lay minister, let me do that. But I really fell in love with the church and decided to become a local pastor. Well, what does that have to do with peak performance? One of the things that I learned in life gives us all sorts of opportunities to understand how we can maximize what we need to in what we're doing. And so this church had had some challenges over the years, and had a decent endowment, and it was looking to be closed. And so I did a weird thing when I got there, is that I empowered the incredible lay people in the church. And so they really stepped up, and they have stepped up since I've been there, and the church has begun to grow. And what I've done is begun to set some peak performance goals for the church. We want to grow our membership. We have Youth Sunday, our youth programs, our other programs. So you may be a pastor watching this and say, well, I don't want to run, the Olympic, track and field, but how does this peak performance align with me? And so part of it, even in the spiritual area, to begin to look at how you can serve God, how you can serve whatever religion you have, how you can motivate other people to get the most out of themselves. So that's kind of the spiritual side. The mental side is my parents sacrificed, and so I went to, as you heard, I went to Princeton undergraduate, and in the U.S. it's been rated the number one college in the United States for the last 15 years, and it's no better than anywhere else, but it focuses on undergraduate education. And as an African American, and there's not a very large African American population there, I kind of went there thinking that I'm less than. I went there thinking that, I'm just lucky to be here. It's just a blessing to be here. But I learned a lot about myself being in that challenging environment. So kind of lesson number 2 is make sure you are in the most challenging environment you can be. Too often we want to be a big fish in a small pond. It's better to be a small fish in a big pond because you will naturally grow. And especially for those people of color, that oftentimes we do not understand how good we are until we are forced to push ourselves beyond our comfort zone. So part of peak performance is really thinking about, am I pushing myself beyond my comfort zone? Intellectually, spiritually, and in a minute we'll talk physically. And so it forced me to do that. It was the perfect place for me because really very few people like graduating from Princeton because they make sure that you suffer when you're there intellectually. But it has the best alumni network of any university in the United States, if not the world, because you felt like you've gone through a war. So we have, you may have seen on TV, wear these obnoxious orange and black outfits, and we come together, and people come back after years to Princeton because we were pushed, and we were able to make it through. And that taught me a lot. And I happened to, my parents didn't have a lot of money, so I had to work in the dining hall. And so some of you may work in the dining hall in college. And Princeton had a system back then of students did everything but cook the food. And so in the Commons Dining Hall, we actually served 20,000 meals a week. And I worked my way up from mopping the floors to the crew captain to a student manager to being the CEO of the Commons Dining Hall. And I had 400 students working for me part-time. And the staff cooked the food, but we did everything else. Clean up, cook, clean up. Well, why is that important? Well, that really helped me understand that I have leadership skills. That of those 400 people, some of those folks are U.S. senators now. Some of them are Congress people whose parents, they didn't need the money, but whose parents wanted them to have discipline. So again, I guarantee that virtually everybody listening to this, everyone here, if pushed, will grow to the occasion. And that leadership has allowed me to do a whole bunch of other things, some of which you heard about in leading. I realize that God is calling me to be a leader. And it's not because I'm any better than folks. It's really because I see the value in everyone I work with. I see the value in everyone I lead. And we'll talk a little bit about something called coach leadership. And then finally in sports. So I grew up playing sports, playing basketball and tennis, and I had a chance to be ranked in tennis, and tennis is actually one of the reasons that I was able to get into Princeton. But sports teaches you a lot about peak performance. It's really a microcosm of life, because what happens in the course of a game, in the course of a match, in the course of an event is what happens in an extended period in your life. As you're trying to get peak performance in your job, if you're trying to get peak performance as a parent, if you're trying to get peak performance as as academically. And so, some of the things that you learn is one, the goal should be very clear. That goal and it's not necessarily about winning, but it's about being better than you were yesterday. It's about growth. So that's lesson number one. Lesson number two is that you seek out criticism. I'm one who I don't like criticism, but that taught me that I need criticism. I will not get better if everybody who works for me says, Dale, you're perfect, don't change anything. So as you're thinking about peak performance, you should welcome people in a constructive way to really tell you how you can do whatever you're doing better. But so often we shy away from that, and especially as that is a lot of young people don't want to hear that you've got to work a little harder to be successful. So I'm excited about going to the Olympic trials here in Jamaica, and I know the U.S. had their Olympic trials, and the gentleman that won the 100-meter dash, finished last, I believe, 4 years ago. And so he could have walked away, but he focused, and we'll see some of that tomorrow or Thursday or Friday this week, where students where young people are really trying to say, what do I need to do to really get to the next level in performance? So athletically, that's lesson number two, is really accept criticism. Lesson number three is really how do you push yourself to a level that you didn't think you could? And we talked a little bit about rising to the occasion, but it's important for you to really be honest with yourself to say, am I really pushing myself as hard as I can? One of the realities as you look at peak performance is the mindset is so critical to success. I often talk about, in my leadership, there's a book that I got when I was a senior manager at Deloitte called The 22 Immutable Laws of Marketing. Law number one is it's better to be first than best. And so the rule of the 4-minute mile. Remember the 4-minute mile. Nobody was ever going to break the 4-minute mile. It wasn't going to happen. When the guy broke the 4-minute mile in South Africa, within a month, 3 other people broke the 4-minute mile. It's because of the mindset. It's because of the mindset. Rule number one was it's better to be first than best. Rule number two, if you can't be first, is to create a category where you're going to be first, where you can be first. And that's how I'm leading Centenary University. We're doing a whole bunch of things like our partnership with G.C. Foster. So that is really one of the critical things. So for me, looking at how I can achieve peak performance spiritually, mentally, and physically has driven me. So that's kind of phase one. The next thing is this thing called influence. I wrote a book called Intelligent Influence. And how I started writing the book was I was going to write a book on leadership, but there are a million books on leadership, but I thought I had this unique thing on leadership. And I looked up Webster's definitions of leadership, command, and authority. And the thing that I found is that the word influence was in each one of those definitions. So it set me on this path to really study this word called influence. And I discovered that it's a word that's hidden in plain sight. They'll say she's influential or he's influential, and what does it mean? Do they have more Facebook followers? Do they have more money? Are they rich? Are they powerful? Are they good looking? But what you realize is that we do what we do, think the way we think, and accomplish what we accomplish because of influence. Let me give you an example. One of the examples are English accents. You can be born in Kingston, or somebody's telling me Montego Bay has a different accent than Kingston. You could be in Sydney, Australia. You could be in London, England. You could be in Birmingham, Alabama, Brooklyn, New York. And you develop a very different style of English accent that often stays with you the rest of your life. So think about all the other influences, your favorite food, your sports team, your culture, your religion, who you think is attractive. All of those influences really help to shape who you are. Yeah, why that's important as we talk about peak performance is that too often we think we've made all the decisions in our life. Even politically, 70% of the people vote the way their parents voted, 30% vote the complete opposite way. So part of this thing is you're looking at your own peak performance is to understand your influences. As we look at public policies, we look at other things, we need to understand what are the influences in the people we interact with. And it's been a wonderful message for me, especially as a leader, because I've learned I actually enjoy working with conflict. Because I realize it's not personal. If I have two people, and John and Sally, I say, Sally, what do you think influenced John to do that? And John, what do you think influenced Sally to do that? And that so often when people argue, it's their influences arguing. And so sometimes we argue with ourselves as we're trying to be the best that we can be. So we need to really step back and think about how we've been influenced. And it's okay if we've had bad influences as well as good influences. Not all influences are good, but I think we need to really begin to really think about those influences as we begin to try to rise over the peak performance, to rise to meet that peak performance that we like. One of the things about influence that I think is important to note is I was head of a charter school in Trenton, New Jersey, which is a very poor community, the capital of New Jersey, and 90% of my students were African American, and many of them came from very poor homes, and they were dealing with what seemed like post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. But it really wasn't post, it was continuous. So I actually coined a term called urban traumatic stress disorder, UTSD. And the idea is that it has nothing to do with how smart you are. Your amygdala, the part of the brain that controls emotions, is out of whack. Because they have to deal with poverty, they have to deal with violence, they have to deal with abuse sometimes and other things, that affects your mind. That affects it has nothing to do with how smart you are. So why is that important? Because as we are looking at our own peak performance, especially elite athletes, many of them are dealing with UTSD, urban traumatic stress disorder. The good news is that if it's admitted, there are things like mindfulness and other therapies that can help you address the trauma so that you can get the therapy you need to get to the next step. The beauty is that people can get over it. So one of the things as we talk about peak performance, we often talk about the perfect person who's going to win the Olympics and so on, but a lot of us are dealing with trauma. A lot of people are dealing with trauma, and just because you're dealing with trauma doesn't mean that you can really reach that peak performance. The next thing that we want to talk about is the difference between what we have done and who we are. I don't know whose phone. All right, so the difference between what we have done versus who we are. So I often show a iceberg. And so we all know that the iceberg, most of the iceberg is below the water surface, right? So a little bit is above the water surface. The reality is that we judge people based on what's above the water surface. Where'd you go to school? What's your job? How much do you make? What do you look like? How tall are you? What color are you? Those kinds of things are all what we judge. Yet that's not who we are. So you heard, I went to Princeton and Wharton and I did all these things, the president of a university, pastor of a church, but that really isn't who I am. And so oftentimes when I have slides, I'll show a picture of my dad, a guy named Ralph Abernathy and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. at a press conference. Ralph Abernathy was Dr. King's right-hand person. And they were organizing a march to integrate the Boston public schools. And so that influenced me to want to be in education at the highest levels to really make a difference. So I've been on school boards, public school boards for combined over 40 years. And so that is more about who I am. And I have a foundation, the Dale Caldwell Foundation, that's really focused on using entrepreneurship and trauma-informed care to really help reduce poverty in the world, to really work with doing poverty in the world. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a second. So why is that important? Because so often we start to believe our resumes. And that gets in the way of our peak performance. We want to think that I got money, I've got a nice car, I've got a nice life, but sometimes that gets in the way of our peak performance. One of the things that has happened in a lot of sports in the United States is that the drive to be successful is not where it was. That if you look around the world at many of the most successful athletes, they have a hunger to say, either I'm going to be an extraordinary athlete or I may be homeless. I may be barely making, so that I have the hunger to do whatever it takes to be successful. And obviously tennis is my love. I was on the board of the United States Tennis Association. I was inducted in the Eastern Tennis Hall of Fame. And Novak Djokovic, if you know Novak Djokovic, who's really the best player in history, even though I'm a big Roger Federer fan, grew up in poverty. And if he wasn't, a top tennis player, he would be homeless or he would be struggling in life. And that drove him to do whatever it takes. So what we have to do is really look inside ourselves to really understand that no matter how comfortable we are, that we sometimes have to become comfortable being uncomfortable. I was at Deloitte Consulting for 11 years. And one of the things we learned is we'd have to learn an industry in a week, and we'd have to do this, is that we learned to become comfortable being uncomfortable. And so what does that mean? Well, that means that when we are comfortable, I'm actually uncomfortable being comfortable, to be honest. Now, I've gotten so much that I want to push myself. I want to challenge myself. What can I do most? Okay, I won this award or I achieved this goal. What's next? Because one of the things you learn, and extraordinary athletes will tell you, is that it really is about the process. That so often, I've talked to so many successful athletes who have a Super Bowl ring or gold medal or a Wimbledon trophy. And I say, where is it? Well, it's in my basement. It's because the victory was not as sweet as the process of getting to that victory. And so as you begin to think about that, it's important to really understand that. Then a little more about influence. I put together in this book, Intelligent Influence, I put together a framework that has 4 steps of influence. The first is influence awareness. So as you're going through this process of trying to achieve peak performance, you have to be aware of your influences. You have to be aware of the influences of your parents, the influence of your family, the influences of school, good or bad, and really be honest about those influences. Then once you have, that's called influence awareness. The second step is called influence impact. So once you're aware of those influences, you have to think about, and I'm going to give you an example, think about the impact of those influences on what you do, on your job, on your life, etc. The third is influence management. The fourth is influence maximization. So let me give an example. I was working with a law firm, the 8th largest law firm in the country, in all of their offices. And they still have partners who yell and scream. And so I said, okay, well, let's look at this model. So the influence awareness, his partner, I called the fictional name was Bob Yeller. So Bob Yeller grew up in a household where everybody yelled at each other. They just yelled out of endearment and so on, and it wasn't to be mean or anything. They just yelled at each other. So that's the influence awareness. So he understands we came from a home where people yelled. Influence impact is that that prevented Bob from getting promoted. Because Bob would be yelling at people in the office, and that didn't sit pretty well, especially in this environment today. So Bob needed to do something with influence management. So he got a coach, etc. And then with influence maximization, he was able to really get it to work. I used something called Pat Quiet. Pat Quiet. And so Pat was someone who grew up in a home where they said, students, young people don't speak unless you're spoken to. So she goes to the work, and the impact is that she doesn't speak up. Then, so she needs coaching to say, hey, you need to speak up more if you want to get promoted, and then influence management. So, influence maximization. So these things are all important for you to look internally as you're trying to achieve your peak performance. One of the things that Centenary University is known for globally is that we just graduated our first class in the Masters of Happiness Studies. So a Masters of Happiness Studies. And the person who teaches it is really a global icon in this field, Tal Ben-Shahar, who actually was a Harvard professor, taught the most popular course at Harvard. This is an international program. It's all online. 23 different countries are represented in the program. And so one of the realities that Tal Ben-Shahar, remember that name, and you can Google him, you'll see that he has all sorts of lectures going on. And this is a pretty rigorous course that uses classical literature. And one of the things that comes out of it is that seeking happiness is not the way to be happy. It's really about anti-fragility. It's how you deal with the downside, how you address the challenges that you have in life. And this, again, applies to peak performance. Peak performance is always, it's going to be hard. There are going to be times when you want to give up. And if it's not hard and there are not times you want to give up, then you're not pushing yourself enough. So you really have to deal with that anti-fragility and become strong with that. So in the few minutes I have left, I want to talk about the 3 things that are critical for success in life. And that doesn't matter what you do, doesn't matter where you are. The first is emotional resilience. So we talk about dealing with the emotional strength that you have. We all will face problems. We all are going to be down. We're all going to be upset. We're going to be angry. We're going to have difficulties. But the people who are striving for peak performance realize that it's just a phase. There's a chance that I will work through it. And so we have to develop the strength to be emotionally resilient. We have to be able to address the anti-fragility, the downside in life. So that's step 1. That's called emotional resilience. 2 is intellectual curiosity. With artificial intelligence continuing to grow, things are changing. We've got to be lifelong learners. We can't sit there and say, oh, I have a great degree and I know everything I know about my job. We've got to be lifelong learners. We've got to continue to really push the envelope. We have to read. We have to analyze. We have to communicate. And so it's important for us to really think about this thing called intellectual curiosity. And the third is something called intercultural skills. As some of you know, DEI, there's an anti-DEI movement, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we all know how important that is, but the language doesn't connect with some folks. So one of the things that I'm saying is that, which is DEI, is intercultural skills. Is that what we need to do is develop intercultural skills. Well, why is that important? Why is that important for peak performance? Success in life is going to be based on how you interact with other people. And the mistake that a lot of folks make is that they interact with other people the way they want to be interacted with. The United States, has had a horrible international reputation of going to countries and expecting people to be exactly like we are in the United States. Instead of going to countries and saying, I want to speak the language, I want to learn the language, I want to eat the food, I want to understand who you are, I want to understand where you come from, I want to understand your influences. So those things, emotional resilience, intellectual curiosity, and intercultural skills. The next thing is, and this is one of the things in our Masters of Happiness program, is that it's built around this framework called Spire. S-P-I-R-E, Spire. So it's all about spiritual well-being, physical well-being, intellectual well-being, relational well-being, emotional well-being. So the spiritual well-being of connecting with something that's bigger than you. You don't have to be a Christian or Jewish or Muslim, but the spiritual connection. Physical ties to what we've been talking about. You've got your body your mind-body connection. Exercise is critically important. Intellectually, as I said, intellectual curiosity. You've got to push that. Relational. All the research shows that your relationships are so key to your happiness, are so key to your mental health, are so key to your physical health. As I talked about and kind of proved the case about influence, it's important for us to understand who we're hanging with. Who we're hanging with. One of the things, I don't know how many of you have children, but what is it that we want our children to have? We want them to have good influences, right? We don't want them to have bad influences. Yet sometimes we forget about ourselves, and we're hanging around the wrong people. So we want to be able to, as we're looking at peak performance, to make sure that relationships are so much more important. And then emotional well-being, emotional resilience that we talked about. So one of the things that is critical as we do this is one, to understand how important it is to help others. One of the keys and one of the secrets, there are very few days when I've ever really been down. There are very few days, and I kind of think I may be an aberration because so many people are dealing with trauma and hurt, and it has nothing to do with money. It has to do with my mind is focused on, I'm blessed. God has blessed me with opportunities. I've had great education. I have great friends. I have a great life. I can travel. So I have a responsibility to give back. And so much of my time is thinking about being a voice for the voiceless and speaking up for those who are struggling financially. And so if we need to, in order to reach peak performance, you can't just focus on yourself. You have to spend your life, a good portion of your life, thinking about, yes, obviously with your family, you want to think about your kids, you want to think about your children and others, but think about those who are struggling in life. We have a responsibility as human beings, inside, outside of the church, to really think about how do we help others become the best that they can be. And so often we forget that, and so often we judge other people, and that's part of our downfall. And then finally, the key is to set a very clear goal. Sounds easier than it is. And once you set that goal, work harder than you think you can to accomplish that goal. So set your goal as to what peak performance means. It could be winning a tennis tournament. It could be running a race at a certain time at a personal record. It could be getting a promotion at work. It could be making more money. It could be anything. But set that goal and hold yourself accountable to working towards that goal to achieve the peak performance. Then really challenge yourself to make sure, as I said earlier, that you're doing more than you thought you could. Don't try to do what you thought you could. Do more than what you thought you could. And so sometimes it's good to have accountability partners, to have people who some friends and others who can say, well, what's your goal? What are you going to do? And then annoy the heck out of you by saying, did you do it? Did you do it every day? And so that's what a coach does. That's what a coach really can do for athletes. But we all need our own coaches. Even the best athletes in the world need coaches. So in conclusion, this Peak Performance Summit is so much more important than I think people realize. We in life are striving to achieve the best that we can be. And if we're not striving to achieve the best that we can be, we need to change how we view our life. We need to rethink what we're doing. We have to really challenge ourselves to think about, where do I want to be? One of the problems is so many people it's like hopping in a car without GPS and driving from one end of Jamaica to the other end of Jamaica and just kind of letting the wind blow. That's how most people live their life. We've got to be intentional to reach peak performance. We've got to know what peak performance is, and we've got to do the best that we can. So with that, I just want to thank you for the opportunity to speak. My goal is, I'm not a motivational speaker, but I want to give you a lot of things to think about. I want to reintroduce you to yourself is really my goal. So thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of the conference.
Well, I'm definitely inspired. Thank you so much, Dr. Caldwell. So there are a number of takeaways for me. In the list of the lessons that you gave, you mentioned criticism. Now, that's something that a lot of folks cannot take. A lot of people cannot handle being criticized. And I genuinely believe that there is massive growth that can come from criticism. Of course, constructive criticism. We're not just talking about bad mind people who just want to have things to say and tear you down and them not do nothing. We're talking about constructive criticism from which we can learn and develop and grow. So that one stood out for me. The happiness course, where you spoke about anti-fragility. Now, we're living in a world where we are offended if the wind blows. So it's interesting to see how that course is taught to speak about anti-fragility. So you can't be so weak and so easily broken that you don't understand yourself and understand when to focus on the things that will actually make you happy and not focus so much on the things that will make you unhappy. Now, clarity on purpose and direction. That was another thing for me, determining where or what peak performance looks like for you, because peak performance looks different for everybody. It's different for every individual. You know, somebody's peak performance might be, like we always, naturally, the first thing that would come to mind is an athlete. You think about Usain Bolt, you think about Shelley Ann Fraser-Price, and you think about them performing at their highest, at their best, and clocking those amazing times. That's peak performance for them. For a mother, peak performance very well might just be being able to get the kids out of bed on time and getting them to school on time. And that is peak performance for her. So everybody's peak performance is different. What is important, as I'm taking away from your conversation, is when we identify our purpose or direction, when we have clarity on that, then it's a lot easier to get to that space of peak performance. Thank you so much for sharing with us. That's amazing, absolutely amazing. And I'm sure that our friends online who are watching are walking away with massive amounts of information. So we're going to take a break right now from our live stream. And then when we come back, we're going to be having a panel discussion talking about entrepreneurship and financial performance. Of course, finances are extremely important. Lots of folks don't want to talk about it, but it really is very important. And we have Brandon Hayden, Managing Director from JN Fund Managers. We have Tasty Blackman, Trade and Business Expert. We have Dr. Andre Houghton, Senior Lecturer in Economics. And of course, we have Anil Walters, who is our CEO of Pivot. And I will also be sitting on that panel to guide the discussion. So we take a break right now, and then we'll be right back. So stay tuned, don't go anywhere. And welcome back to our Peak Performance Summit, brought to you by Pivot. My name is Sharanda Farrell, and I get the opportunity, the pleasure, and the honor of hosting and guiding the proceedings for today. So right now we are sitting in with an amazing panel. La de accolade lang, like me two and them, two put them put together. And so I'm gonna have them introduce themselves, and I'm going to start with a beautiful woman by my right, Tasty Blackman.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Tasty Blackman, a business development consultant, and I am passionate about helping businesses to grow and innovate to achieve their goals. Throughout my career, I have had the opportunity of pivoting across varying industries and sectors, and through these, I have been able to achieve peak performance, be it from manufacturing to pharmaceuticals, to investment promotion, to physical therapy, and also in tech and business process outsourcing. I have really learned to adapt and adjust the challenges and growth, and use the opportunity to grow and grow with the changes that come along, adapt with the pivots that have been given. I'm really excited about being here today with the rest of my esteemed panel to discuss and share our insights about entrepreneurship, pivoting, and growing in our careers. Thank you.
Hey guys, what's up? I am Dr. Andre Horton. I am a senior lecturer in macroeconomics and international finance at the University of the West Indies. I am also the PNP's Shadow Cabinet Minister for Science, Technology, Innovation, and Entrepreneurship. I am also the PNP's MP caretaker for the St. James West Central constituency. I've done a lot of work with different businesses and different government bodies as it relates to macroeconomic issues and international financial issues, mainly pricing, inflation, interest rate, exchange rate, stock market movement, and so on, as it relates to how companies can understand their own global positioning strategies and how the macroeconomic environment impact business development, business survival, as well as business expansion. It's important for us to realize the idiosyncrasies that exist between different businesses in different industries, and to look at how macroeconomic conditions vary based on these idiosyncrasies. And then with that broader understanding, we can have a better knowledge of how companies can adapt to survive, and how government policy as well can be used to enhance the developmental pursuits as well as the expansion of different industries and different business. I'm really looking forward to the discussions that we're going to have today with my esteemed panelists. And yes, this is a really good day, and we're hoping that we have a really good event.
Thank you. My name is Brando Hayden. I am the Managing Director of JN Fund Managers Limited. That's the investment arm of the JN Group. Very happy to be here, very excited about what we're going to talk about here today. My passion or my experience has largely been in finance and the trading of illiquid securities and managing those assets, which I find to be very similar to managing the career of athletes, which I've done as well, right? The challenges are very similar, are the same almost. So we heard from Dr. Caldwell earlier about really, actualizing within sports and peak performance. And for me, that is a combination of gratitude and challenge, right? Really through a lens of gratitude and challenge. And, one of the things I'd love to cover today is really price discovery. We have a lot of entertainers and athletes who come into the respective industries and have no idea what they should charge for their services and what they should charge for their brand. And I think, it's one of the things I'd like us to touch on today. So excited to be here, and looking forward to the discussion.
All right, this is amazing. This is absolutely amazing because I'm out so low down, they can't hear me. All right. Lovely. Okay. Great. Sweet. So we've sorted out our technical issues, but I have a question for my panelists, and any one of you can jump in and answer this question. Who is an entrepreneur? Who wants to start? Dur, dur, dur.
So an entrepreneur is that person who sees an opportunity, recognize the benefits of it, and seize the moment to take advantage of it. This is a person who is also open to taking risk to gain the benefits associated with these opportunities.
Yes, from my point of view, an entrepreneur is a person who is new and innovative with their ideas and approach. Fundamentally, many times as an entrepreneur, you don't really get to see the immediate benefit associated with a particular venture, especially up front. But you must be willing to navigate your own ideas, to put those ideas from a thought into reality. And even sometimes as an entrepreneur, you have an idea in your head and you think it's a money-making idea, and when it actually comes into reality, you realize it's a loss-leading idea. So it's like, you know, the process is ongoing. It keeps evolving, and kudos to the many who have benefited from it profitability-wise, but there are far more entrepreneurs who have lost compared to those who have really earned, you know?
Brando, from your perspective, being involved in financing for so long, when do you think it is time for an entrepreneur, based on what Andre just said, to make the decision, should I continue or should I stop?
So yes, I have many, many clients who are entrepreneurs. I mean, in the form of individuals, in the form of companies. What I find distinguishes all of them really is the penchant for creating value by taking risk, right? And applying a healthy amount of patience in the process, right? So your question is what makes them, you know, the decision is what to keep going.
Based on your experience, you know,
Right.
I mean,
Or
when is it time to run on, versus when is it time to hunker down and say, okay, I'm going to pivot and make this work?
Right. You know, it's funny, I haven't had a lot of clients who have decided not to continue. They all continue, but they continue in different forms and down different lanes, and they just never stop, really, right? And so they may start off selling one particular product today in one particular industry, and then they pivot, right? From before the term was popular, they pivoted and moved to something else. And so I think that's the hallmark of some of the really great ones, right? So, you know, I don't want to give any specific examples, but
Without calling names,
Without calling
okay?
names,
Yes,
right?
we don't want to point fingers.
I mean, there are, you know, stories of folks who are in, let's say, you know, medical supply sales and pharmaceuticals, right? Who started from the trunk of the car, let's say, right? And literally built and built and built and applied a lot of patience, right? But applied a lot of vision at the same time. And over the years, they ended up not selling what they used to do in the beginning, but where opportunities presented themselves. And they would have had the ability to borrow or take on equity and grow that way, they would have done so. For the most part, in our history in Jamaica, you know, entrepreneurs grow through their own cash flow, which isn't necessarily the most efficient way, but folks have a lot of fear when it comes to debt. Folks have a lot of fear when it comes to taking on strategic equity partners.
And that's where you come in.
Exactly, exactly. And so we bridge that gap. And so we've helped numerous, you know, companies over the years bridge that gap, get equity financing, get debt financing to grow and diversify the business.
So, Tasty, this one is for you. Now, you help businesses to grow. You help businesses to pivot, if you will. I'm curious as to how challenging, or maybe one of the most challenging experiences you've had with one of your clients in terms of thinking, okay, it's time to let go of this, not let go of the business idea necessarily, but let go of this particular thing that's not working for you and shift in another position. I mean, we're going to use the word pivot to death today. The most challenging experience you've had in terms of getting your client to recognize that, okay, it's time to let go that over there, so, and hold on this over here, so.
Thank you. That's an interesting question. So one of the most challenging experiences I've ever had with a client trying to help them to understand it's time to pivot is a client who took on something that was nothing more than a hobby. And I had to announce to the client, this is not a business. It is something that you enjoy doing. It is something that brings you tremendous joy and fulfillment. But from a business perspective, it neither has the ability to scale nor make profit. It doesn't solve anybody's problem, and it doesn't relieve anyone's pain. And if you can't relieve any pain, solve anyone's problem, or accelerate and grow the business to make profit, it's just not going to be sustainable. Tough, but we had to have that conversation. It took a while. It stings usually when you have to have these hard conversations, but they're necessary conversations. And sometimes it's the kind of constructive criticisms that you bring to entrepreneurs to get them to become enlightened, to take the decision to revisit what they're doing. This particular entrepreneur was able to pivot, change direction, and entered the tech space with a similar basic fundamental idea. But this time around, it was from a tech perspective that they entered the space to do a business. Now they're successful. They've let go of the hobby, and they're making profit, and they're solving several people's pain. Thank you.
So then it's safe to say really that if we are not solving a problem, if we are not offering a service that is needed, that is necessary, then we really can't consider gaining rather peak performance in a business. Because if you're not selling something that people want to buy, then there is literally no point to that. No, I'm curious, Andre, in terms of, you spoke about micro and macro, and in terms of, let's say for argument's sake, when people think of entrepreneurs in general, there's the idea of the businessman who is selling a thing. There's a product that they're selling. So if we take it back, and I'm going to be completely selfish right now, coming from my space and my perspective, you know, I'm an actress. I do own a business, a production company, but that's separate for this moment. So I'm an actress, and I want to sell my services as an actress, just like a singer or a DJ, for argument's sake. And I'm putting a proposal together because I'm selling me. I think I'm so awesome. So I'm putting a proposal together to go to Jay and to say, listen, this is my idea on paper. I think I'm awesome. I think I can do this and that and all those things. The challenge I'm having is, where do I find, does it exist, data to support my claims that I am awesome enough to qualify to get that loan from Jane?
Wow, that's such an applicable question. I think all three of us should be given a chance to answer that question. The idea is a value proposition, right? Like, who are you? What's my purpose? What's my value? What's my value to the company that I'm offering my services to? And then what's the value to them? Fundamentally, as it relates to data, then you have to see how the attributes that you possess coincide with the attributes of a particular person, a particular business online, to see how they are being compensated versus how you should or ought to be compensated. I think that, you see, because of the different macroeconomic fundamentals between different countries, different people who offer probably similar services based on the economic construct earn differently. So a nurse in America earns sometimes between 70 to 150,000 US a year, while a nurse in Jamaica earns anywhere between 20 and 40,000 US a year. And the different services, a barber in America gets paid 10 US per cut, sometimes 15. A barber in Jamaica gets paid 7 US per cut on average, and so on and so forth. So you have to understand the difference between the macroeconomy that you are offering those particular services in, or selling that particular goods in, or offering yourself to serve in, versus what the market is willing to pay for those services.
I'd like to add to that and say sometimes it's critical to do some market research to understand the trends in the industry that you're participating in and seeking to take advantage of. How are you stacking up against the other players in the industry? And sometimes you may not have formal sources of database for information, but what you can do, I find, is go into the industry associations to see what data and what information they would have collected about the sector or the industry that you're seeking to enter, to get some amount of market intelligence if you're unable to find one of these statistical institutes to give you that kind of credible, reliable annual data collection that you would need in other types of industry.
Could this potentially then take us to the conversation we were having before about price discovery? Please tell us a little bit more about that and how that has somehow affected your decisions over at JN.
Right, so precisely. And this applies to companies that offer new and novel products that have no precedent, right? So to build on the valid points that both panelists have shared. So it applies there, it applies to, we've spoken a lot about sports here today. It applies to individual athletes, it applies to meet organizers, right? And to most especially to sponsors, right? And so if we look at it from a business standpoint, from an entrepreneur that has a new product or service, you have to try and find as much data as possible, and it speaks to both points. Sometimes you can't find data in Jamaica, and so you have to go and find something in a comparable market, right, and just benchmark against that, right? So you don't have exact pricing information, but you're going to benchmark against some form of global pricing information. And so we see that a lot. Sometimes there are markets that are more scalable than ours, right? And so you may say, all right, then there's a discount because our market is smaller. What we're seeing a lot these days is that folks are coming up with products that can be sold, that are digital, and they can be sold anywhere in the world at any time, 24 hours a day, right? And so if you're sitting in Jamaica, it is immaterial, right? And so you have to look on that now to see what is the total addressable market for this product, right? Where can I, can I get as many sales, beyond geography, and then you start to back out a price from there, right? We were speaking before we started about athletes, athletes coming out of high school, coming out of college, in sports like track and field, where there's no collective bargaining agreement like what you have in the NBA, the NFL, or Major League Baseball, where you know exactly what the minimum pricing should be for your salary, right? If you're a first year, a second year, a third year, it's very clear. In sports like track and field and some of the others, it's not clear, right? And so this impacts your decision making when you're coming out of high school, you're coming out of college, and you now are the individual entrepreneur, because your ability, your athletic ability, is really what is up for sale, so to speak. It's up for sale to the shoe companies that provide the endorsement deals. It's up for sale literally if you're performing for your country and you can win a medal, right? And so entities like UK Athletics, for instance, actually place a monetary value on the different medals, right, that you can win. And so they'll give prize money for different medals or allocations. Endorsement deals from shoe companies. But finding out and trying to find some equity and parity to say, I'm leaving high school or college, my performance is the same as this person's, right? How should I measure against that? And it's a lot of qualitative, the approach is largely qualitative in this price discovery process. You have to go and speak to people and hope that you can get the information. Because in some of the sports, in some of the business activities, those prices are kept quiet,
which is actually what I was going to jump on. So for argument's sake, if we're looking at, and I'll naturally fall back into my comfort zone, if we look at Netflix, for argument's sake, nobody knows exactly what their profits are. Nobody knows what kind of money they make, and it is kept under wraps for their own reason. But then that in and of itself does not help the industry to grow, because again, I can't step to a funding agency without some kind of data. Right. And even if it is that it is not data that exists within my own environment, if I can't access that data as well outside of my milieu, then that's a problem, that's a conversation. So how do we determine, and any one of you can respond, how does an entrepreneur then determine their price point? If they're trying to get a loan and if they're selling as well, how do they determine the price point if it is they don't or they can't get access to comparable prices? Where do we go? What do we do? What's the answer to that question?
So I think certainly from the point of view of an entrepreneur, if you come to a space like Jan, let's say, we have a very large ecosystem, right, where we may actually have pricing information from a similar entrepreneur or in a similar market, right? And so that's one way to go about it, right? So our ecosystem, we have Jane Small Business, which is now a part of Jane Bank. We have Money Transfer, right, which is Jane Money Services. We have Jane Fund Managers, right? And so if you think about it, almost every supplier of something in this country passes through, right, Jane. And if it's not through their business, it's through their personal endeavors, trying to get a mortgage, etc., right? But there are central bodies, and Taste would have mentioned before, different business associations, that kind of thing. But if you can find central bodies that interact with transactions, right? The accounting firms, which not always so approachable by a startup company, but they have surveys, right? They audit most of the businesses where all these transactions happen. So there are pockets of information, certainly in our Jamaican market space, that you can try and find. But if you leverage that power of an ecosystem that is larger than your own, I think that's one way to go about it.
Do you want to jump in, Andre? You want to add something?
Yeah, man. And in the absence of data, it makes it a little bit more difficult. But normally, you look at it from two angles. One, the income angle, how much revenue you think the particular entity is going to get based on the services that you offer to them. And then you try to earn at least a percentage of that particular income. And two, from the expenditure side, how much you think it's going to cost them and cost you, and then now try to earn an income with that expenditure with a particular markup. There are a lot of creative activities that don't earn you as much as you would expect it to. So you have to now understand the industry that you're entering as well, and then to see how the particular services that you're offering match up with what the industry is willing and able to pay you.
Okay, all right. So thank you for that. Based on my experience in dealing with myself as well as clients, because we also represent entertainers and sporting figures through my company, we found that it can definitely be a challenge identifying that kind of data. But it's good to know that coming to a space like JN, you actually have that data that we can tap into. What I'm curious about is, and I'm happy if you each just kind of jump in on this, is can you speak to us about the economics of sports and entertainment in Jamaica and the wider Caribbean? Does it make sense?
Yes, of course it does. Of course it does. In 2012, 2011, 13, I did the cost-benefit analysis for the Caribbean Premier League. That's a cricketing event, and it was sponsored by Digicel. And what the results showed a net benefit for all the countries involved. Remember, it's not just the game being played. Even though the game being played is profitable, it's an ecosystem of economics that surround the entire thing. We're talking about backward and forward linkages. So the uniforms that the players wear, the cricket bats, the cricket balls, the wickets, the laying of the pitch, the tractors that lay the pitch, the men who drive the tractors, the gas that goes into the tractors, the ticket sales, and the advertising, the sale of food, the nutrition for the athletes.
Printers of the tickets.
Exactly. So it's a big, the hotels who benefit from tourists who come to watch the game, the Airbnb who benefit, the taxi driver who takes the people from their hotel, from their Airbnb to the sporting event. So it's a big ecosystem. And the thing is, Jamaica, if I should go specific to us, we have not been able to fully capitalize on our domestic branding and to use that to enhance our sporting activities and sporting events.
Why
and
do you think that is, though?
Many challenges. Politics, one of them, one of the main ones. A lack of understanding of the true economic impact of many of these activities is also another. Third is the overall just lack of willingness and the ability to really execute a lot of these events profoundly. So we are handicapped in many regards, and I think that we need the experts to come in to assist us now to really make these events as profitable as they can be.
And these experts, I'm assuming, can either come from within our own space or come from, or can be external.
Right, right. And so, I mean, I think perfect example, right, that Andre just laid out. Cricket is a global sport at this point, right? I mean, cricket in India as an ecosystem and value creator alone accounts for so much of the revenue in global sport right now. It's just astounding, right? And we have a brand, a Jamaican brand, a West Indian brand that lends itself, right, to marketing the sport around the world, right? So all the sports that Jamaica participates in, cricket, football, netball, track and field, and so we excel as a country in netball and track and field, right? And again, price discovery is a question, right? So, you know, what should we demand from, you know, endorsement deals with a Puma or an Adidas, right, in our sporting space? And so a lot of times, shoe companies will say, well, you're a small market, right? I can't sell, you know, more than 150,000 shoes in this market. When the fact of the matter is, that's actually relevant, right? And so, you know, I'll give an example of, I think I would have first done a calculation way back in 2004, when Veronica Campbell came out of the University of Arkansas, went to the Olympics and won the 200, right? An ad placement in prime time on NBC at the time was about 75,000 US dollars per second, right? Now, in prime time, this is 2004, in prime time, NBC ran a feature, a 5-minute feature on Veronica Campbell. Okay. Then when she won the medal and they played the anthem, when she was on the podium, that ran for another 2 minutes. So there are 7 minutes on Veronica Campbell on primetime TV, NBC, right? That went around the world. 1 second, $75,000, right? So let's take away the 5-minute feature, right? Which was really personal to her, her time at Arkansas, that kind of thing. And let's just look at the 2 minutes on the podium, right? When you looked on the images of her on the podium, what are the brands that you see? Exactly, right? And I think she had an endorsement with Adidas, but you also see the Jamaica flag.
The Jamaica, right, yeah.
You see the Jamaica, so brand Jamaica is there. The sentiment is primarily associated with brand Jamaica, but brand Jamaica is not capturing the actual value. The real value being captured there is the shoe company that's on the other side, right?
But I think that's because they understand the value. They understand the importance of being there, being captured, being exposed. We are yet to get there.
That is it, but we're providing the content, right? And so, I mean, there's a Wall Street article on Puma where they speak about the growth or the ascendancy of the brand after partnering with Usain Bolt, right? And so when I speak about price discovery, we need to understand our value, right? Not only in our space, but understand and appreciate our value globally so we can monetize it properly. If you were to multiply the 120 seconds by $75,000, right? And we've had many, many, many of those, right? Not only in track and field, but in other sports, right? Literally, that should provide a baseline for the amount of money we should demand, right?
Wow.
Right, from those who endorse. And so it's a bit of a pet peeve for me, but at the same time, we should also recognize that our associations with a lot of these brands have also helped to develop our brand, right? And so it goes both ways, but there's a basic underlying floor that I think we need to start to appreciate that we bring to the table.
Thank you. So I wanted to just reflect on some things that Dr. Horton just said. And for me personally, when I heard him, talk about the makeup of the ecosystem that we really need and the beneficiaries and all the players that benefit, I think one of the things that's really missing from our ecosystem is the inclusion of the data scientists to help us to gather intelligence and data so that we can make informed decision, we can better position ourselves to take advantage of these opportunities that we perceive are there. But without the inclusion in the ecosystem of our data scientists, and I talk about companies like Blue Dot and the rest of them that are there collecting good information, analyzing it, and making us gain better insight into what these industries are capable of and what they're doing and how we as a nation will be able to take advantage, leverage these opportunities for the economic development of our country. Thank you.
Lovely. All right. So let's talk about value then, because we're talking about peak performance, and that's lovely. And we're talking about still focusing a little more on local sports and entertainment. You mentioned how we can value, for argument's sake, the time that was spent with Veronica. How do we determine our value as in brand Jamaica? What can we do to identify or determine what that value can look like? Can, not does, but at least starting there.
So Tasty mentioned data scientists and data collectors and those who work with big data. What they say these days, the saying is data is worth more than oil, right? And it's absolutely true. So I think we start there. I've heard interviews countless times on the radio and television of marketing experts coming to Jamaica and saying, you guys don't know the value of your brand. All the time, you don't know the value of and that is probably true. And
I think it is very, very true.
It is.
Yeah. You don't go anywhere in the world and not find a Jamaican. I was looking at, I'm going to let you finish your thought, but I was looking at a video on Instagram, I think it was yesterday, and this young woman said that she's been to something like 20 out of 30-something countries, and every single one that she's been, there's a Jamaican restaurant. So there's a Jamaican there, and brand Jamaica is being represented there through our food, but yet still, there isn't a sense of this bigness that we can actually embrace so that we can bring that value back to our local space.
Absolutely. I read something once that the Chinese culture is one of the most pervasive cultures, right? You go to most large cities, you find a Chinatown. But I think with this resurgence or the impact of media, I would argue that our culture is almost, if not greater, in terms of pervasiveness, right? You cannot go anywhere on the planet and people aren't celebrating Bob Marley one way or the other, the coffee one way or the other, the music in general one way or the other.
And you're saying, of course, right?
And the athletes, right? And so I'm not sure, and it's just me not being aware, who exactly is the keeper of our brand. I mean, I think we all are, but who exactly?
That's a strong question, who really controls the brand? Because now I've also seen, I think it's oh my goodness, it's a film on some Jamaican icon
that was not written, produced, directed by any Jamaican, that was not shot in Jamaica, but yet still they have somehow managed to take this story, create this story with people who sound nothing like us and barely look something like us, and it is now being shopped on global markets, and they are benefiting and we are not. So how do we own our brand while we hone our brand?
That's a really good question. I think my initial answer, everybody, the tendency is to say government, right? And I think government is, can participate, but I don't know that it's government's responsibility, right? And I don't know that government is necessarily equipped to do that. But I must say that there is a need for us to somehow capture a lot of the value that seems to be just flying away, right, from us, so we can actually bring it back in and continue to build the brand, continue to build the economy, right, in a good, sustainable way. I don't have a quick answer for that.
I think it's really all of us responsibility, and that we have to collaborate, both private sector, individuals, and the government, to take control of the brand, to leverage the brand, and to put ownership on the brand. I think we need to spend more time talking about things like intellectual property protection and how we do that effectively in this new age of digital space, innovation, and AI. How are we going to ensure that we have systems and methods and procedures in place to manage our brand and then to leverage the benefits out of our brand? We should also think about working with countries who have gone all out in conducting studies on country brand, because certainly studies on country brand and how to leverage country brand is somewhat different from a product brand management or a business brand management. And there are experts out there in the world that have seriously taken on the business of country brand study and country brand management, and we should really embark on that. But get the wider society involved. We need all the people of Jamaica, those living here and those living outside of Jamaica, to participate in this discussion and this process, to do what is necessary to protect the brand, to leverage the brand, and really monetize the brand. Because I think at the end of the day, that's what we're really talking about. And we don't want to be shy about it. We really need to leverage and monetize the brand to make money. And we shouldn't be shy, because money matters. And everybody else out there is trying these days, from the smallest country in the world. And Jamaica already has a lot going on for brand Jamaica. We don't even need to invent anything new. With what we have in just sports, entertainment, we can just take off with the creative industries to leverage brand Jamaica. Thank you.
Yeah, she's correct. He's also correct. I think that we have to do an audit of the things that we think that represent us as a brand, like the things that represent the brand. And then whenever these things pop up or are being used by an individual, by a country, then we negotiate what portion of it represents us and then what our cut should be. But until we categorize the different aspects of brand Jamaica and then state specifically what these aspects are, then we will be in a position, therefore, to be able to earn and generate income from these different aspects as they present themselves in the global marketplace.
I think a bit of this can also be considered cultural appropriation, because it is somebody else who is taking who we are, what we have, and how we exist as a people, and they are making money from it. It's a pet peeve of mine to, when I lived in LA, I remember they came out with Luke Cage season 2. And season 2 was focused on the Jamaicans being the bad guy in the film, if you will. And I recognized personally only one actual Jamaican in it. Everybody else was from a whole other country, and none of them sounded like us. It was very, very painful to watch. Also considering that I knew other Jamaicans who had the ability to do the work, yes? But somehow, because we don't own it, or we're in a position where, and I don't want to speak out of turn because I don't know all the full details, but sometimes we're not able to negotiate a particular kind of way, or we don't necessarily understand the way it is to be done or can be done, and we don't want to embrace, when we should, the external advice. There is this level of ignorance, and no, me know me I do, man, is all right. No, you don't. You understand me? If somebody else can continue to take your culture, aspects of your culture, and make money from it and excel, and we are still here trying to struggle to figure out how we can find peak performance with our brand Jamaica, then we definitely need to get some advice and some guidance. So we started out talking about entrepreneurship and financial performance, and we somehow went around the mulberry bush and found ourselves back here. So my last question before we wrap up is, what are some of the key elements that you would identify for an entrepreneur, business individual, when it comes time to pivot?
So, some of the characteristics that you want to consider when you want to think about pivot is understanding, as an entrepreneur, your own strengths, your own skills. Understanding and doing the research into the area that you intend to pivot into. Take mentorship and counsel from persons who are already in that area that you wish to pivot into. And also, prepare yourself with skills that are transferable. Spend time educating yourself and taking courses and learning to develop skills that are transferable, that will redound to your benefit when you make that shift. Embrace change. Learn to love being uncomfortable, doing new things, and become more and more curious. Do not suspend your desire to learn and challenge yourself to learn new things. So I think those are some of the things that entrepreneurs should consider on their journey when they decide it's time to pivot.
Yeah, from my point of view, it's strictly dollars and cents. After a while, you must realize what has been happening, how you have been losing, if you're able to overcome the factors and the characteristics that contribute to this loss versus other opportunities that exist to increase the difference between your revenues and your costs.
So characteristics, I often say to folks, commit to value creation, right? And that value creation may come in different forms over a different period of time, right? And so if you commit to value creation and serving your clients and your customers, right, that should generally carry you through, right? But as Andre just said, the reality is reality, right? If the dollars and cents aren't adding up and you don't foresee that to happen, then you have to have the agility, right? You have to have that commitment to value creation to make that necessary change. And I find folks who have agility but a significant amount of grit at the same time, right, to withstand the turbulence of change, they tend to do very well.
So take advice when necessary, understand the dollars and cents, appreciate the value, and be able to shift in order for you as an entrepreneur and as an individual to achieve that financial peak performance that we're all aiming for. Thank you so much for your time, for sitting to chat with us. We are once again at the Peak Performance Summit, brought to you by Pivot Corporation. My name is Sharanda Ferrell. We are going to take a break, and then when we come back, we're going And welcome back to our Peak Performance Summit. Again, my name is Sharanda Farrell. I'm your moderator for this absolutely innovative, exciting, transformative, and on some levels entertaining summit as we talk about peak performance, and it's brought to you by Pivot, of course. And we're talking to you about how you can get to that space, that point, that level that is considered peak performance, and also in the event that you are on your way to your peak performance and something happens, we're teaching you how to pivot. Yes, so we're talking about finances today. We've spoken about the spirituality of peak performance, the economics of it, the psychology of it, physical, as well as cultural, in order to get to our level of peak performance. And now we're going to be having a quick fireside chat, if you will, with Dr. Andre Houghton, who is Senior Lecturer for Macroeconomics at the University of the West Indies, Mona, and Dr. Caldwell, who was our keynote speaker earlier, is a former Executive Director of the Rothman Institute of Entrepreneurship and Innovation inside of New Jersey. So, gentlemen, please take us on the journey as we talk a little bit more about entrepreneurship and financial performance.
Thank you. Hey, Doc, welcome to Jamaica.
Yes, happy to be here. Happy to meet you in person.
Yeah, happy to meet you in person too. We've had so many conversations about how we can collaborate as different universities, but now we're here in person. How do you find Jamaica? How do you see it as it relates to business, entrepreneurship, and the whole environment as it relates to the difference between here and there, where you are from?
Well, it's an extraordinary place. There's an entrepreneurial spirit that really is embedded in the culture here. And you know, as you know, Dr. Houghton and I have talked about entrepreneurship being the key to transforming the global economy, to turning around economically challenged communities. And I think Jamaica is well positioned to really be a leader in really using entrepreneurship and trauma-informed training to do some innovative things.
Yeah, when you look at entrepreneurship in Jamaica, our GDP per capita is about $6,000–7,000 compared to America GDP per capita, which is upwards of $60,000 per year. A lot of big businesses are in America, while here a lot of people survive off very micro businesses. How do you see the difference between those small businesses and their survival versus big businesses, and how can we help to enhance the survival ability of these micro businesses domestically? Well,
the reality, that's a great question. The reality is Jamaica is better positioned than the United States. One of the things that I've said, and I continue to say, is that quarterly reporting is ruining the United States. What I mean by that is big companies have to report every 3 months. They have to do artificial things to make sure they're making profits every 3 months. They can't look long term as independent small businesses can. And they're sucking up a lot of the money that would normally go to small and local businesses. America was built on entrepreneurship. So I think Jamaica is well positioned because they don't have that push to pull money away from the small business to give it to the big corporations for the shareholders. So that's why I'm very excited about doing some partnerships here built around entrepreneurship.
Yeah, we have a very good stock market, I should say, that businesses try to list on to source funding, equity funding, and so on. We have a lot of investment banks who try to invest in small businesses. When you look at distance to frontier, right, you're talking about the ability of a country to grow.
Right.
You talk about 2 oak trees, you see, one tall up to the ceiling,
right,
and one very short, like about this high. The one to the ceiling is that the United States, right? It has already explored a lot of its frontier, right, versus a small country like Jamaica, who is very distant from its frontier. But a lot of the funding opportunities that exist, especially domestically, have gone to those businesses that have already established themselves. The small business, yes, they contribute to the day-to-day money multiplier and the day-to-day survival, not just of themselves, but for people, because they break the bulk. How do you see funding for these small businesses, and how do you see them growing and moving Jamaica's GDP per capita forward?
What I think we need to do is have a partnership, an innovation partnership between folks here in Jamaica, folks in the United States. Because at the end of the day, they're not going to suck money away from these big businesses, but if they're innovative, then they can do things. I really think being small and nimble is a bigger advantage than people think, even without capitalization. I say that Sears should have been Amazon, BlackBerry should have been Apple, AOL should have been Google. You know, and I think small businesses can, and the United States is kind of where Sears was, right? You know, the rich are getting richer, the rich are doing well, and I have nothing wrong with people who are billionaires. But when the middle class is disappearing, that's a problem for a country. In the United States, the middle class is disappearing. I think in Jamaica, we have an opportunity to really invest and grow the middle class in a way that it's very hard because of the politics and other things to grow the middle class in the United States the way we used to. So that's where I think that opportunity is. And I think capital, innovation can circumvent capital. You know, you don't always need, I think sometimes we rely too much on money thinking that's the only way we're going to grow our business. But we don't have to start our business full time. We can kind of ease into our business, especially if we have partners.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. For Jamaica's point of view, when you talk about capital versus innovation, they go hand in hand. But fundamentally, we have a middle class that's about 10% of the population.
Wow.
Compared to America, whose middle class is upwards of 50% of the population. 83% of the Jamaican population has no tertiary level education. 65% have no high school diploma. 65% have no skill. So we operate a very low skill, low tech sort of environment. How do you see us escaping that?
Well, there are a couple things, and I know O'Neill Walters and I had talked about the garment industry. So for example, the United States spends so much over to the Asian countries to really get things done. Yet here in Jamaica, harnessing solar and other things to really do garment industry here, which is a much closer and much friendlier relationship with the United States, that I think Jamaica can supply a lot of the needs of the United States population. But they need folks from the United States who are willing to come down and work and really make the investment to really do that. And I think we're at a stage now where people are willing to do that.
Yeah, but Jamaica used to do that. We used to have what is called the free zone area, where we made garments for Nike, for Polo, for Jockey.
Really?
We used to make those underwear for Hanes. We used to make those shirts and so on and so forth. But a lot of those businesses, as you quite rightly said, have gone over to Asia. So you find a lot of the name brand products being made in Bangladesh, being made in Vietnam, being made in Indonesia, Taiwan. And Jamaica, because people who work in these industries are low-wage industries. So a lot of people don't get to earn the amount of income, but the Chinese, they're willing to make that low-wage sacrifice because they have such a huge population. They're comparing, it's like the Arthur Lewis's model. We're looking at people moving from the agrarian era to the industrialized era, where you can get anything margin above zero is a positive for you, versus a country like Jamaica where people can survive without working. So they need a bigger margin above what it would be from just moving from the agrarian era to the industrialized era, for them to feel like as if their labor values something.
Right. That's a great point. One of the things that's driving the American economy, good or bad, is celebrity, right? And so one of the other things that's happening is that more and more people like myself, I'm the first African-American president of Centenary University, there are more and more people of color assuming leadership roles in the United States than ever before. And many of us recognize the importance of Jamaica, of black countries, to the economy where they've been overlooked. And so now if we can create an environment where celebrities who are making their own, Polo and Nike, they're going to continue to go where they're going. But the next brand, people don't care about that. That's going to be old soon when the next celebrity brand comes out. So if we can work to have the celebrity brands manufactured here, we can begin to, and I think there's a way to do that, we can begin to transform the economy.
True. That's so true. So think about it like Italian design.
Yeah.
Connoisseur type fashion, Paris. You know? So I think Jamaica does have some of these brands as well, but the brand appeal to the bigger market size will depend now on the ability of it to be celebrity sized, as you quite rightly said. So we have to begin now to how we forge partnerships.
Exactly.
Like how we forge partnership between domestic goods and foreign celebrities, or foreign goods and domestic celebrities, or whatever the case may be. The market size that America has been very important to the entrepreneur in America.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
When you look at that market size versus the market size here in Jamaica, it's 3 million compared to 150 million, 200 million people in America.
Right.
how can we compete? How can we grow our domestic market size? Does the advent of the internet affords us that opportunity to?
Absolutely. I mean, and I think there is a segment of the United States that's willing to really be part of that market size for entrepreneurs, for Jamaican entrepreneurs who want to sell to the United States. I mean, as you know, politically, there is becoming a bigger and bigger divide in America. Mm-hmm. You know, it's one side or the other side. And there are some folks who are, you know, pro-DEI, if you will. You can call it pro-DEI and anti-DEI. The pro-DEI people want to support businesses of color no matter where they are in the world. And so I think that market size challenge that's been a challenge historically, you know, can be overcome with Jamaican, and you know, there are as many Jamaicans, I think, in New York as there are in Jamaica. Mm-hmm. So, you know, Jamaica has a strong presence in New York. And Andre, what I found is leadership is lacking, that they're looking for, and as a college president, working with Yui and others, we can begin to provide the leadership to say, well, why are you supporting those big brands that aren't supporting our countries?
Exactly.
And I think it's just some leadership from Jamaica and leadership from the United States to work together. One of the cultural leadership things that's changing is that, and I know that people have been burned here in Jamaica. America has been come here and said, give me, and then I'll give you. And then you give us, and then we don't give it back. But this new culture, especially this new leadership of color, has said, I want to help you, because I know if I help you, it's going to help me. It's a totally different mindset, and that's the mindset that I have. And I think you'll see that even though there have been bad experiences in the past, that there's a new leadership that's willing to work with you and help this country grow, because we know that will benefit us.
Yeah, do you remember Tulsa? Do you remember the Black Wall Street? Do you remember the days of slavery? Mm-hmm. Now, what do you think has changed in the approach, in the minds of the global elite, in the minds of the upper echelon, that will now allow them to allow black businesses to unite in this time that they didn't allow, say, 30 years ago, 50 years or 100, 200 years ago? What has changed in their mindset towards us that will allow us now to be able to have these integrating businesses without sabotage?
Well, see, that's a great question, but the reality is their mindset may not have changed. What happened is average people have more power in the world than they've ever had before. Through social media, through internet, we're not using it. We're still looking for a leader. We're still looking for a politician to lead us to do that. But if we can harness this power that we have, social media, we can start businesses online. We don't need the powers that be to approve it. So we can actually circumvent that. But we need the leadership to believe that we have that power. Let me tell you, we have, you know, in America alone, the black business population would be the 10th largest country in the world. And we just have not worked together. But now with this divide in the country, there's an opportunity for us to work together like never before. So I'm not worried about I went to Princeton and Wharton, so I went to school with some of the families. And so I think there's a real opportunity because the world has changed. And that's part of the fight in America, is that the world is changing so quickly. The powers that be are very, very angry or scared that they're going to lose their hold. This is our time.
Yeah, you see what's taking place with the United States dollar, right? You see what's taking place with the... Yeah, you see what's taking place with the United States. You see what's taking place with the US dollar. Mm-hmm. Yeah, sorry about that, guys. You see what's taking place with the US dollar. Mm-hmm. You see them losing the petrodollar aspect of their ability to be exchanged for the only currency to be exchanged for oil.
Right.
You see where they are getting competition from BRICS. You see where they are also getting competition from Bitcoin.
Right.
Is America losing their global dominance? What effect do you think this is going to have on small countries, big business, big countries, small business?
Well,
Your take.
You're absolutely right. I mean, the United States, you know, we can spend the whole hour talking about some of the political and other reasons why the United States does not have the same respect that it had 10 years ago. And so, but that's an opportunity, because as the United States is losing its influence, there are people within the United States that were excluded from power and influence who can really start to do some things. And so part of it is this new leadership is really willing to, those of us that because of affirmative action, other things, have gotten great education, have had great jobs, that are on Wall Street. There's a power elite of black folk that are ready and willing to do some innovative things and really begin to transform the global economy. And it's changed.
Excellent, 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 excellent. Well, guys, we want to put Jamaica into point of view. We want to have a broader understanding of big business and how does Jamaica survive. The domestic culture, we have a low labor force participation rate in some instances, right? You have a lot of people who abstain from working because income levels is so low. Minimum wage is like at 100 US per week. So a lot of people, they prefer stay home and call somebody abroad to send that $100 than to actually go and work themselves. Right. Yeah, what do you make of a sort of economy in that particular regard?
Well, and if you look at some of the urban areas in the United States, you have a similar kind of challenge. So part of it is mindset. So I wrote this book on influence called Intelligent Influence. And so part of it is influence, but it's also trauma. I had talked about this urban traumatic stress disorder. Some of that relates to the trauma, the amygdala part of the brain is nothing to do with how smart you are, that people are scared. I've sat with gang members and others and put a pencil in front of them, they jump back because they're constantly on edge and they can't keep a job even if they wanted to have a job. And so, but there's a real opportunity. And as I said, the 20-80 rule, 20% of the people do 80% of the work. I think that we can begin to get some of those folks that really want to work and begin to influence a work ethic that makes you feel better about yourself. Because if you're not making your own money, if you're not working, a job is the best social proof because it makes you feel like you're productive in life.
Yeah, but if they constantly work for 100 US a week, for the month they work 400 US and their bills is like 1,000. So it turns them off. How do you get that income level to increase so that they now can feel more motivated to go to work based on the compensation?
Well, part of it is the compensation. There have been incentives in the United States not to work. There have been incentives put in the United States not to have a family. That a single mom will get less money if she gets married. And so in the United States, those have been some of the detriments to this. But I really believe deep down, if given the right job, that even the laziest person would want to work. And so I think what we have to do is really work and do a listening tour, to really sit back and listen to folks and start to create, because influence is a powerful thing, negative influence and positive. If a community, and I think we target a community, target a few communities here in Jamaica, and if you start to see some folks working, driving nice cars that they've earned, doing stuff, and I've seen this in the United States, the communities have been transformed. So there's hope that just because somebody is the way they are today doesn't mean they'll always be that way.
Yeah, but it seems to be rather a construct of the system rather than a construct of the person, because like few people get a chance to get into that high income earning bracket. The majority, because they have so low education and the jobs being offered to them, because even when they do get education, they leave, they go to America, they go to Canada, they go to the UK, they go to Bermuda, to Cayman Islands, they don't stay here. So how do we get the ones who stay here?
Well, we're actually doing this. So we believe there are 5 levels of education. So at Centenary, we've started right by Atlantic City. We've partnered with a group to start a vocational U. And so there's a gentleman who originally from India who's done that for 8 years. And what he's done is taken people out of prison, we have a young man who's going to get his bachelor's from Centenary. He got into trouble, went to prison, came out, went through the vocational program, now has a successful food truck with his son, and both of them are coming to Centenary. So we're working, so if you look at Trenton and you look at parts of Jamaica, there are a lot of similarities. So we have a robotics program. So this vocational program really can work and combined with trauma-informed training can do it. So I've seen it happen. So I really have seen it happen. So, I know we're near at the end of time, but
Yeah.
I'm hopeful we can get there.
Anything that you want to find out from me as it relates to?
Yes, well, I mean, yeah, I've admired your academic work. You're brilliant. I love your research, but we need you, the stats and the history and the other economics that you know. What's your future? What is next with you? You've done so much research. What's next on your academic calendar?
Yeah, I mean, I have a book now that I'm writing.
Okay.
Actually, two of them. One on financial inclusion and financial literacy in developing countries, and the other on overcoming macroeconomic deadlock. And that's these small developing island states that found themselves revolving around low growth, low tech, and low wages. And the deadlock is really how do they catapult themselves towards macroeconomic development. I've joined politics. Yeah, I'm the shadow cabinet minister for science, technology, innovation, and entrepreneurship. So a lot of the policy, I'm now building out a TOR as to how we can move Jamaica forward. And you're going to be, I think you should join my task force as well. I have a task force with ambassadors from the US, also big businesses, development leaders, and so on. So I think we stand a good chance. I'm also running for a seat in Western Jamaica that's over by the St. James West Central constituency. So we're doing a lot of political work, a lot of campaigning, and so on and so forth. So wish us luck, and whenever you can, you support the movement. As you said, we need better leaders, and there's no better leader than yourself. You know, so we've seen the mismanagement of the economy for so many years. So we have to offer ourselves now with the right mindset, the right acumen to make the change we want to see.
I hope Jamaica knows what kind of superstar you have with this young man. He's going to go places, and he understands why things work the way they do more than any other politician I've ever seen. So good luck.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much, Dale, and I want to commend you for taking the time out from your busy schedule to come here in Jamaica to help us with your expertise and also to forge partnerships, because these partnerships are important, and the more we begin to learn from others, the more we begin to understand the situation that others are in compared to our situation, and I think the better decisions we'll be able to make. So you have 1 minute. So any final comments?
No, I would just say, have hope. Remember that what is today doesn't mean it's going to happen tomorrow, and that we need to understand that, I talked about influence before, understand our influences, and remember that together we can accomplish anything. We've got to work forward, and entrepreneurship is the foundation of transforming this world, bringing peace, bringing prosperity to every single human being.
There you have it. Good discussion here with Dr. Dale Cadwell from University in America. We are now on the pivot panel and giving you all the advice you need about how to make your business pivot and how entrepreneurs can advance. Stay tuned.
And welcome back once again to Pivot Peak Performance Summit. Thank you for staying with us for the time that you have. And we are hoping and trusting, we almost know, but we still hope that what we've been sharing has been beneficial to you or somebody you may know. Don't forget, we will be live again tomorrow between 9 and 3 to take you through another day of teaching you, sharing with you how you can achieve your peak performance wherever you are in your career, wherever you are in your space, in your life, whether it be personal or business. We are here to help you, to guide you to get to that level of peak performance. Right now, we're going to be talking about funding and partnership in peak performance. Of course, everything is about performing at your peak today. And we have with us Dwayne Excel, who is a communications specialist, as well as Anil Walters, who is the managing partner for Pivot, who's responsible for putting on this summit. So, gentlemen, I invite you to take it away.
All right, thank you so much. And it's indeed a pleasure to have this opportunity to sit and speak about something that is close to my heart and I'm very passionate about, and I'm sure O'Neill as well will enjoy speaking about this topic.
Definitely.
All right. So in terms of peak performance and partnerships, how do you see those two being married and working in a symbiotic relationship?
Okay, so I believe that in partnerships are critical. I mean, in life, in every part of life, for a better word, marriages are partnerships. But when you look at, for example, if I delve in the world of sports, over the years successfully, partnerships have either created economic change in people's life, Michael Jordan, Nike, Usain Bolt and Puma, but also sports brands that uses its influence, whether it takes or receives its influence through partnerships that extend beyond the field.
So I want to just go into talking about the things that people don't necessarily talk about, so those small niches. So recently the partnership between universities with cultural exchange and information exchange.
Yes.
Talk to me about how that kind of partnership helps with peak performance.
Yes, so, and uniquely, we have a partnership, Dr. Dale Cardwell from Centennial University, GC Foster College, which Pivot was critical in putting together. And it was born out of, for example, an opportunity to cut across cultural divides, to bring, what I call the Caribbean, not developing, but an emerging market, because I believe that the Caribbean is an emerging market, and I introduce it as such. These relationships create new opportunities and break boundaries and introduce brands to new market space. So now GC Foster is now introduced to a first world market through the relationship, and in Centenary benefits from broadening its scope by the ability to say, I can now bring to the United States the prowesses of what track and field success is in the Caribbean to a wider market in the US.
Right, you mentioned track and field, and it is probably one of the biggest powerhouses in terms of Jamaica, but the potential is there to earn through track and field, through these partnerships. But what do you think needs to happen to ensure that this kind of partnership isn't just limited to just a GC Foster and Centennial? How can it expand to the different universities in Jamaica?
Well, it can. So, and that's an interesting question. So, for example, and I'm using the case study around GC Foster and Centenary as a base. When the conversation started out, or would have seen Dr. Cardwell and Dr. Horton speaking earlier, that relationship was a possibility to look at entrepreneurship. At the time, Dr. Cardwell was at Crowley Dixon as Executive Director for Entrepreneurship and Innovation, and Dr. Horton being a lecturer. And the idea was, how can we expand opportunities for bringing the kind of training and learning that entrepreneurs are exposed to in the US, and what are the channels? And the channel between the universities are, I like to say it's a bridge. You create a bridge, and you can cross that bridge back and forth, bringing knowledge between the two spaces. And I think it's something that we need to do more of, because that also gives the ordinary student at university. So when you do a degree at UWI, and you get your master's and you get your bachelor's, etc., a lot of the times when you go to the United States, you sometimes have to start all over again.
Yeah.
When you have these partnerships that allow you to get a accreditation of a U.S. university tied to your university degree program here, it literally creates, it's like removing borders.
Right. So in terms of the marketing aspect of it now, how do you market something like that to a nation such as Jamaica or Trinidad or the Bahamas for them to understand that this collaboration is not just for their country, it's for the economy that's in the Caribbean. So people don't look at the economy of the Caribbean, people look at their own individual countries.
Yes.
But how now can we as CARICOM make that a part of what we do to further enhance what we're trying to do in each country?
So because cricket is on the verge, T20, it's interesting because I'm gonna slide into another direction. So as at Pivot, we also represent Tata Communication, which is one of the largest global telco in the world. And I've been working on them doing business in the Caribbean and the conversation around cricket. So cricket, I mean, while in Jamaica, cricket is maybe not the biggest sport. In the Eastern Caribbean, it is
the sport.
It is the sport. And having relationships, for example, like a Tata, that comes into the Caribbean and has the bandwidth to distribute content to mass audiences, billions in India, Asia, Europe, and even North America. It now creates an economic value for every different level in the cricket suite, whether it's high school cricket, club cricket,
right,
or cricket at ICC level. Those relationships, and I guess tomorrow we'll hear a little bit more about how the dynamics of content and distribution, but those relationships now break boundaries, but it trickles down to the young, emerging sports talent.
Right.
The same thing for track and field, the same thing for the boundaries is not just around sport, because it also creates value for somebody that is a sports manager. It creates value for someone that's a sports manager. It creates value for someone who
team manager, massage
team manager, massage therapist,
right,
other people that are in the field.
Yeah.
That is, you're not the athlete.
But you mentioned you mentioned cricket just now, and I want to kind of touch into an important point that you made. Cricket around the world is a billion-dollar industry.
Yes.
But when you come to the regional level, when you come to the local level, sport in general isn't viewed as the money-making machine that is in the Caribbean. Why do you think that is?
Because we have not found a way to engage the consumer in a bigger way beyond selling tickets to the stadium. What we have been doing over the years is we're surviving by the gate.
So how do you fix it then?
You fix that by creating consumer experiences, merchandising, fan engagement. It's beyond, you have to go beyond the field. You have to make the experience for the consumer more engaging. And in a digital age, there's so many different ways that can be done. Because when you have a buy-in, because we are bandwagonists, right? When the team wins.
To some people, not
yeah,
all of
I mean, and I use the word bandwagonist in a general way because when a team is winning, it's like endorphins. You're excited, you're hype, you're sharing in the glory. And like everybody, when the team not winning, you may still support, but you're vexed, right?
Right.
Now, you have to capitalize on the win and extend that experience beyond licking a six. How do I translate that six that Chris Gayle hit? Which Chris Gayle, I think, has done a very good job of marketing himself beyond the cricket.
Yeah, and you find that individuals do well at marketing themselves in certain sports. You mentioned Chris Gayle, I think of Usain Bolt. I think of these athletes in the Caribbean who have done a great job at marketing themselves. How is it that now can we get it to a level where it's a team kind of market, where people are drawn to it to buy merchandise, to have experiences outside of just coming to the stadium? Because I've visited UCLA in the past, and I've gone to their Olympic showroom.
Right.
Why is it that we can't get to that? What's stopping us?
I think it has to be a marriage and a partnership between sports administration, club teams. It has to be a plan. It has to be a strategy. I think what is happening is a lot of individualism. I mean, Usain Bolt is a top guy. He has a team. He maybe have a good. And I'm gonna use music and sport as an example. Of Bob Marley and the Wailers, Peter Tosh, Bonnie Whaley and Bob Marley. The difference, I believe, with Bob Marley's iconic success, even though Peter Tosh has an iconic success himself, was maybe the team that was behind the success. And that's why it's so critical for us to look at who's the PR manager, who is the communication expert, he was the barber, who's a stylist, right? We don't tend to pay attention to these other functions. And on a team, heavy is the crown, the head that wears the crown.
Right.
So the president of JFF may get all the flack, right? But the GenSec, the coach, the massage therapist, right? The ball boys, how they're treated in training, how they're treated. Where's the retreat? Where's the motivational seminars? How are we motivating these players? How are we what is their experience beyond scoring a goal? And we have seen in, for example, track and field for years, prior to Asafa, Usain, and that era, where Merlin Ottey was never truly celebrated or earned, financially and otherwise, but she was a performer.
Right. And you mentioned all those people who are involved, and we tie it back to the relationships, the partnerships, the partnership with the fund, the partnership with the communities, the partnership with the sponsors. In closing, what is it that needs to be done from whether it's a local level, regional level, for us to get to the place where we can see ourselves, or our athletes, or those associated with the sport, making money from the global industry that is sport?
We have to become more intentional about success. I think we treat success as more of something that happened to us versus something that we make happen. We have to become more intentional about our strategic plan. In marketing, right? If you're going to launch a product, you have a go-to-market strategy. You don't just make a product and expect that it's going to sell. You have to look at your target market, the needs of your target market, what makes them tick. You have to know who likes to drink tea and what time of day.
Right.
You're not necessarily going to sell tea at 12 midday. You're going to sell it as breakfast. It doesn't mean you can't drink it at 12 midday.
Because there are some people who like it at
exactly.
midday.
But you have to now look at your target market. You have to look at marketer scale. And marketer scale, whether it is Mexico City with 20 million people or it's Skinton City with 700,000 people, it's who is your target market and how do you connect with them? What do they like? And how do you make them experience you? How are we experiencing our athletes? How are we experiencing our sport teams? What kind of products are we sharing with them? What does the jersey look like? And I'm going to be honest, and I'm not hitting anybody, but I recently, I have a friend who, the team will remain nameless, but he gave me a jersey for a local team. And I said to him, I'm wearing it because I'm supporting you, but I would prefer to pay $45 US for a quality jersey than to get one for $5. I want to wear that jersey with pride. People will pay for the value proposition that you present to them. There's a time in Jamaica growing up, I was a kid.
Please don't age yourself.
I'm not aged myself. Or let me say I've heard about butter. I was maybe not born when butter was a big thing. But I've had, and maybe it's reading and researching, right? We would have had that experience of hearing about butter, or maybe Lada is even a little bit more present, right? Tata Boss. Tata now own Jaguar and Range Rover. I mean, you have to evolve, and we have to present quality. We have to treat our fans like they deserve the best.
Yeah, and in terms of peak performance, we've heard, how to pair the partnerships with the fans, the spectators, the community, and it's important. And I think you've delved into a lot, and we could talk for hours about
Yes, we
this.
could.
And I'm sure there'll be another forum for it. But I thank
Yes.
you so much for your insight.
Yes.
And I know that those who are watching, those who are listening, wherever they are, will have a lot of questions.
Yes.
And I'm sure that you'll provide a platform for them to watch and learn more.
Yes.
All right, so thank you very much.
All right, thanks.
And it's...
And thanks for having Grace. I mean, this is doing Excel. And I mean, Jamaica watch you on TV, but this young man is somebody that I'm inspired by. I'm inspired by his aptitude, how he approaches everything that he does. And I mean, that's a hallmark of peak performance for me.
Right.
So keep it up too.
There you have it. Peak performance in every way, shape, and form. Thank you so much, guys.
All right, thanks. Thanks.
segment for the first day in our Peak Performance Summit, brought to you by Pivot, who basically focuses on helping you to pivot to get to your peak performance. And again, tomorrow we will be back with a host of speakers who will be able to share with you about their experiences, their journey, and also to give you information and guidance as to how you can get to your peak performance. Again, I'm Sharanda Farrell. I'm your moderator for this event, this amazing event, if you will. And now we're entering our final stages. We have our final panel together. They're going to be talking about how their individual career path, and experiences can be combined to aid you, the viewer, the listener, depending on where you are and how you're tuning in, how it can aid you to become your best self and achieve your peak performance. So on our panel today, we welcome again Dr. Dale Caldwell, who is the president of Centenary University. We have O'Neill Walters, who is the managing director for Pivot. We have Tasty Blackman, who is a trade and business expert. And this panel will be led by Carol Beckford, who is a communications specialist.
Thank you very much, Sharando. The session, this is how we're going to end it, because I think this panel puts together what day one should really look like and sound like. You know, we have had some financial conversations. We've spoken about trade and business. We've gotten a little creative in cultural industry. We can't come to Jamaica and not talk about that. But what is important about the summit is the partnerships that have evolved. And of course, I'm going to start with Dr. Caldwell, because an opportunity for us to partner with Centenary University, with Jamaica, is critical. But your background really have made you, if I may say so, a successful president with your work in sport, and I'm very biased. I think athletes are the greatest employees anybody could invest in. But tell us, over the last couple of years, how have you helped to transform Centenary into what it is becoming and continues to become?
Well, Carol, I admire you and your work with Usain Bolt and other celebrity athletes. And so it's an honor to be on the panel with all of you. I'm finishing up, actually next week will be my first year. So I'm brand new, but the experience, as you said, in a variety of different ways at the United States Tennis Association, management consulting and education and others, have really opened my mind to the power of partnerships. As you may know, at least in the United States, independent higher education institutions are struggling. This is a challenging time. You've got to be innovative to really grow and survive. And so we are, and really are becoming one of the most innovative organizations, not because of me, innovative universities, but because of partnerships. You know, O'Neill helped connect us with GC Foster. We're working in China. We're working in Turkey. We're doing short course programs. We're doing vocational programs. And that all comes from my background and really working with, and really my dad, who knew in March with Dr. King. You see the invisible people in society. See, one of the things that I think is that the people who have been forgotten, the people who aren't educated, the people that aren't thinking about college, that if you as a college president are thinking about how do I meet the marketplace, and the larger marketplace aren't the people that are going to get a loan and go to college, it's the entire marketplace. And that has allowed us to really help everyone reach peak performance. And I truly believe that there's nobody beyond redemption, there's nobody who can't be given with the right influences the opportunity to really be their best self and reach their potential. And so I don't give up on anybody.
Oh, that's incredible. And I'll come back to your happiness degree that I know you have at the university. I'll go over to Tasty next, because we actually work together at the Investment and Promotion Agency. And she was very corporate, you know, dealt with it, but took a chance on yourself and got out. How has that helped in the last, or how has that really helped to transform you as a business person in the last couple of years?
Thank you, Carol, for that question. It's true, we worked together and we had an amazing experience. Departing from corporate, pivoting from corporate has been an amazing journey for me. It has allowed me to gain new skills, transferable skills, made me embrace adaptability, increase my critical thinking, created and embraced a whole new network of people, professions, and engage in different spaces that I would not have thought about engaging in before, And what that has done for me is put me now in a position to help others, to help entrepreneurs and businesses to pivot, to become innovative, to develop the skill set, to develop the people, the tools, and the attitudes that they need to pivot and to be successful. But also to understand, too, from my own experience, that pivoting comes with risk. You have to manage the risk, and not all pivots are going to be successful. But that does not mean you shouldn't continue to pivot, because the benefits of pivoting outweighs the risk that you take. So for me, for example, not all my pivots have been successful. One in particular that was not successful is trying to get into law. I started a law degree. I don't know if Carol knows this. I did 2 years, and I quickly realized that, oh no, this is not for me. I was more curious about understanding the working of law. But I'm not interested in this bundle of paper, because any profession or any work that I have to do that places me in front of manual of folders of paper immediately stresses me out and gets me freaked out.
I know a good lawyer, so we can.
So yes, Carol, it has been good. My pivot from corporate to entrepreneurial and business journey has been rewarding, and has given me new skills, new connections, and new opportunities.
A difficult question. Is it harder for us as women to leave from what we'd call a secure job into going out there?
Yes, I believe so, because from many different angles, it's more challenging for women, Carol. Many times we're the mothers, we're the leaders of the household, and we are less comfortable or less equipped to take risks that will jolt our families and jolt our careers. And then there are less opportunities sometimes available for women who are seeking to pivot. The doors are not always as easily available for women to walk into the pivot. So it's a much more challenging journey for women. And I think we get labeled and boxed into our degrees, and we become wedded to the degrees, and people have an expectation that we have a certain place and position in life, and we should remain fixated. So if you get anchored down by what the society thinks of you and position you into and set you into these boxes, on top of that, the responsibility of raising a family, which I did, I would say for women, it becomes a little bit more tricky and challenging to pivot.
We'll include that in next year's running, because, I mean, some of the people who spoke, even Sharanda Ferrell, somebody who has been a lecturer, and, you know, and you're accustomed to getting secured financing and secured health, and now you're out there on your own. First of all, the services cost so much more, you know. All right, so O'Neill is the man who really put this together, and in terms of a concept, has great ideas, but two, jump from corporate into being an innovator, and the doors and so on. While it's a little bit easier for men,
Is it?
a little, I say a little, just a little. How has it been for you, O'Neill?
Well,
let's say post-COVID.
Wow. Well, actually, during COVID, I made a transition to the United States, which in and of itself was a transition that was quite challenging. Becoming an entrepreneur, did a very successful stint after being at CVM and having that secured salary situations. We stepped out and started a business, Stratlaw Media, grew through that 3 years of struggle, then became very profitable, then became very successful financially, then pivoted into something that was segued a little bit more, that champagne stuff. Mm-hmm. And then here came COVID, though, that crippled everything to do with sport and entertainment and media.
Right.
And I took a leap of faith, because I thought being locked up in my house in COVID in Jamaica was not the thing to do. Miami was wide open. I flew to Florida a couple of times. No, the point, though, is that transition that has led to this pivot was really that perseverance to be consistent and never give up. It takes a will to believe that you can be aspirational. You have to continue to aspire. While there's life, there's hope. And even when everything seems like it's falling apart, you have to believe that you can put it back together like that Japanese vase with gold.
All right, so O'Neill took a part of philosophy, which is quite surprising. So, but I'll go back to Dr. Caldwell, though. How important is a network? You know, in Jamaica, we call it a kitchen cabinet, meaning your small circle that really motivates. How important is that? And two-folded question, should we still pursue higher education while we're doing that?
Carol, you're asking some wonderful questions. First, I have an amazing cabinet. You know, I would put, and we've made some adjustments, and that's really job one when you're a leader, is to make sure you surround yourself with people who are better than you are. And my cabinet is...
could you say that again? Just look at the camera and tell our leaders in this country, support people who are better
than they are, exactly. And so I would put our cabinet against any university's cabinet. We have a group that really shares my vision of innovation going forward. But that's part of the cabinet or the networking. The other piece is, as I said, relationships. That networking, to have relationships so you can have partnerships, is critical. But also, as I talked in the keynote address about influence, that you want to make sure you're around people who are more successful than you are, people who can give you ideas, people who push you, people who challenge you. So often we want to be the smartest person in the room. And they say, I saw this on TikTok, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room, right? So you want to find that room in that network. So there are levels of networking. One, your cabinet, your partners. Two, the partners you're going to work with. And three, those folks who can influence you to be that much more successful. And then higher education. There are 5 levels, and we want to be unique in that we're saying there are 5 levels of higher education. We call vocational U, undergraduate U, graduate U, doctoral U, and then short course U. So right now, Centenary has a program for every human being on earth, literally every adult on earth. And so the vocational helps those who don't want to go to college, but we believe we can get them there. The short course is all about taking these 30, 45-day courses that are inexpensive, $399 to $800, that really help you develop your identity. So it's something for everybody. You may have your degree, but pick your specialty and then we can focus on that. And so higher education, if the university is adaptive enough, is literally for everybody. But we got to give up this notion of it's only undergraduate, it's only graduate. It really is all sorts of other innovations to help you become the person that you really could be.
You know, it's funny because we're sitting at the University of the West Indies, one of the top universities in the region or in the Americas in terms of its content, but the adaptability. And I'm going to throw that question because, again, I think women, and I'm using myself as an example, I'm in the business of sport. There are still some men who think I don't know what I'm doing, even with all the, so you walk into a room and it's not just about stats. But in the business of trade and business development, men still think that they're the better negotiators. How is it, from a country standpoint and from a business standpoint, have you managed to use your skill sets, especially as an alumni of JAMPRO, to really push down those doors?
So that's an interesting question, Carol. One of my skills that I draw on readily is communication. I rely on it. My ability to listen carefully before I react and respond to the folks that I'm either working with, negotiating with, or engaging. And I think I've become a better professional as a result of that by focusing on my communication skills. I also tend to do a lot of reading to make myself aware and knowledgeable about a wide cross-section of subjects and topics so that I'm in a position whenever I'm negotiating or meeting with or collaborating to make meaningful contributions to the discussions and to impact what we're about to do. I tend to also use my skills in collaboration. I really believe in the wisdom of the group. I really don't believe in excluding any group or any gender. I think if we bring everybody together, if we get the impact from the crowd and all who is at the table, we're more likely to get sustainable results and a better outcome when we work together as a team. So I tend to rely on those a lot in my space of work and my professional role, both in business and in trade, to get the best outcome for all concerned.
I'm intrigued by the idea of, St. Henry having a degree or a course for everybody. And, even before I go back to Dale, O'Neill, we have worked in sports, we have worked in entertainment, and those are the industries for everybody. How has that changed in the last 5 years? Are people more skilled? What are we doing to improve the value of the creative industries based on your experience, even with coordinating, managing, executing events?
That's a very deep question. Very deep question. And I'm going to look at it from two sides. I'm going to look at it from Jamaica, and I'm also going to look at it from the experiences I've had in the U.S. From the Jamaican perspective, I believe that there has been an influx of new strategies being employed. Entertainment, for example, has become a breadbasket for a lot of young people. I think Jamaica's a very innovative space. We tend to adapt to new technology or new experiences. So the execution agencies, the kind of services that they bring to bear, and how innovative we have been with our entertainment product to attract even tourists coming into the island to experience us in a different way. I think on the sport level, though, we could do a lot better. I think there's a lot more that we could do in the era of sports, adding value to how the consumer experience.
Yeah, in the previous panel, you spoke about fan engagement. You want to touch a little bit on that?
Yeah, so and I'm in the process of actually developing a product for one of those global partners. And it uniquely, it's not just a product that is geared for the Caribbean. It's global in its reach, in the sense that while I represent New York City Football Club, and I've been to their games. You go to City Field, and you see all the things and the bells and whistles that they add. And Dr. Cottle has worked with New York City Football Club before. But I think we have not grown. We have done a lot. For cricket, the mound was an innovation, dynamic innovation in its time. It's ahead of its time. But we tend to peak. We tend to get to the summit, and we do not shoot for the stars. I think that we peak, we get complacent, we get comfortable, and Dr. Cadwell said something earlier. We need to start value successful people that think outside the box, stop closing doors, and start opening pathways for growth.
Well, some wonderful nuggets are happening on the panel. We just have a few more minutes to go before we close. Tasty, trade and business development, a lot of what you do is largely very open in terms of the space, as opposed to selling a phone or a drink, but really the comfort or the ease of doing business in Jamaica. And you'd have been across the Commonwealth and in some other first world countries. How is Jamaica changing its promise to the world based on the fact that we're well known, but we're slow in some of the areas? How is trade and business development, generally speaking?
So I would say, we've come a long way from where we started, and there's been a lot of work done by successful successive governments to improve the doing business environment. And you would have recognized that in recent years, Jamaica now has a single window entity to help investors and business people to do business through one-stop shop mode, where you go to one entity and you can get the services of several organizations, such as the tax office, the company's office, the services at JAMPRO, the services in customs, and so on. So all those things have come together to help us to improve the doing business environment. And certainly, in the financial services sector, we see that the banks are certainly doing their part to help to ease the challenges that persons who are trying to do businesses in Jamaica would face. And of course, in terms of also doing business and easing the difficulty, the various organizations like the JAMPROs and the JBDCs, they have been organizing and hosting a lot of events, capacity building initiatives to help entrepreneurs and local business people to improve their skills and improve access to services, funding, and opportunities to help them to do better at doing business in Jamaica.
Doc, I know you have programs for just about everybody, but you've listened to, on one hand, the cultural, the sports, entertainment, that kind of event, and in one other aspect, the traditional form of doing business. How is an academic institution preparing itself, one, not just for my generation, I'm over 50, so I'm studied, probably don't want to go back to school, but I still do courses.
Right.
How are you preparing for the next generation, my son's age, that wants the money, but they don't want to do 3-4 years?
Right. Well, and that's a great question. See, that's where the vocational comes in. One of the things we don't realize is the pandemic has made young people hate education, right? So they hate education. So why am I going to pay money to get something I hate? And so universities have to understand that. You know, we can't convince them to say, well, this is a great value proposition. You actually make, at least in the US, $1 million more by going to college, graduating from college, than you do not. That's not going to sway them. So what we want to do, they want to make money fast. We can begin, and the program we have in Pleasantville, which is near Atlantic City, that we're bringing to Centenary, we pay the students. So we actually pay the students. So for the vocational program. So this gentleman who, Ren Parikh, bought the Atlantic City Press Building. It's in Pleasantville, right next to Atlantic City, and got workforce development money, taught and paid the students to learn how to fix the building up. He got the building fixed up inexpensively. They got the education. They got paid. Then they're doing these other vocational things, robotics and other things. They're saying, well, I want to know finance.
I'm borrowing you for Jamaica. I'm going to borrow you on behalf of Jamaica.
Well, we're actually talking about franchising it. So we may want to work here in Jamaica to do this vocational program. You know, what you need is some government support for workforce development to get people working. That's why when I was talking to Andre, that's why I was saying that we've seen people who don't want to work, who are just lazy, and then all of a sudden there's a work ethic there. And so those kinds of programs really meet the market. And as I said, the one thing that I was at Deloitte Consulting for 11 years is you learn to meet the market. It's amazing how higher ed is not meeting the market. They assume today's market was the same it was 40 years ago. It is not. So you've got to come to these things. You've got to get out of the office. You've got to listen. And so I'm seeing this opportunity in Jamaica, which is extraordinary for a university. But how many American universities are here? Very few coming down here. And so we want to be a leader.
I can't tell you why they're not here on camera, but they're not, because our business facilitation is not as reasonable as St. Vincent and the Grenadines, St. Kitts, Nevis. It's easier to go there, actually, but we can negotiate. No, well,
we're changing that.
We're going to change that.
We're going to change that.
Well, just to wrap up, because we have had an interesting conversation, I still have 4 minutes to go, but I'm wrapping up because they'll each speak for a minute to just talk about one. So the role of academic and educational development in reaching peak performance. What are the 3 things that will be important over the next 5 years?
Well, one of the things, and I alluded to them in the keynote, emotional resilience, this idea that you have to be able to deal with the downsides of life. And so we didn't talk that much about the Masters in Happiness Studies program that we have, that 23 countries, students from 23 countries are in the program. It's online, so everybody in Jamaica can participate in that program. And we're going to do a doctorate. Well, what that does, Tall Bench here talks about the ways that you can develop that emotional resilience. The second thing is intellectual curiosity. You've got to be a lifelong learner. The world is changing faster than it ever has before. If your mind isn't agile enough to really learn, you're going to miss opportunities in life, and you're not going to have as much fun. And the third thing is intercultural skills, the idea to work with different people. And it's not even about race, it's about where people from Montego Bay, I understand, are different than people from Kingston. You know, people from Alabama are different than people from New Jersey. So part of it is really understanding. So emotional resilience, intellectual curiosity, and intercultural skills. And universities can prepare people for all three of those things, and Centenary is doing that.
The little you know of Jamaica, Dale, how is that inculcated in our culture? And culture meaning how we are as a people.
Well, one of the things, I don't want to indict the U.S., but, you know, that there's been a culture of exclusion in the U.S. that's run it, a culture of separation. You know, I actually started 5 Black Halls of Fame: the Black Authors Hall of Fame, Black Inventors, Black Entrepreneurs, Black Inventors, and Black Tennis Halls of Fame. Right. And what I say is that America's like a football team where you have a goalie and others. You have all these diverse teams. So I'm saying in America, start an Irish Hall of Fame and a Jewish Hall of Fame, and by celebrating diversity, we come together. So anyway, Jamaica does a great job of celebrating diversity, much better than we do in the United States. That's a competitive advantage.
Okay, all right. Speaking of competitive advantage, you know, I like when we do these things. What is Jamaica's next best opportunities for trade and business development?
So I think Jamaica is on its pathway to taking on the tech and innovation space, because with the digital age that we're living in, I don't think we have any choice but to seek out taking on tech and innovation. And by that I mean start to train people, start to change the curriculum that we have as far down as the basic school level, so that from an early age, our children are exposed to tech, STEM, and technology. We're going to have to get there as the pathway for growth and success. And I don't mean in an isolated way. I think the way that we should approach it as a country, look at the things that Jamaica is already naturally good at. We're naturally good at sports, entertainment, and the creative. Why not take our people onto a journey in tech, STEM, and innovation around those areas like sports? I just heard my colleague talk about creating innovations to deal with how people get a chance to interact with sports in a more, you know, a better way.
A better way. And he gets the last word because my floor manager is giving me the wrap up.
Over to you.
STEM, O'Neill.
Yeah.
What's the next big innovation in sport? The Olympic Games, Summer Olympic Games will be in LA in 2028. So the Americas with World Cup football and so on. What's the next big innovation in sport?
I think we just have to figure out how we give if there's 5 persons in a family, each person, mother, father, daughter, son, has a different perspective on how they enjoy an activity. And I think engaging, we're in a digital age, and experiences are really reconnected to that endorphin, what excites us, and we have to find a way to make it happen. There's a product coming though.
Okay,
so we'll hear about it.
This has been the panel that talks about innovation, creativity, and clearly, with a happiness degree in undergrad and possibly a master's, you can get anything you want out of life. I'll now hand back over to Sharando, who is just going to wrap up the session. My name is Carol Beckford. Thanks for listening.
Thank you so much, Carol, and our very learned, experienced, and just absolutely amazing panel. I've walked away from today learning so much, so many things that I will definitely be implementing in my personal space and my professional space to ensure that I achieve my peak performance. This, of course, has been the Peak Performance Summit brought to you by Pivot. So today we had the opportunity to listen and learn about entrepreneurship and financial performance. We learned about identity and strategic influence from our keynote, Dr. Dale Caldwell. And of course, we spoke about funding and partnership in peak performance. And tomorrow, we're going to be expanding even further. We are here at 9 o'clock until 3 p.m. And we're going to be talking about cuisine in performance. I know I love my belly, so I'm going to enjoy that one day. There's also culture in brand. Juliet Campbell will be speaking on behalf of Puma. And we have identity and culture in peak performance, fueling peak performance with mindset coach Keneal Chambers, and education in peak performance, gateways to success, amplifying with media. So we have a full day tomorrow, so be sure that you join us right here on SportsMax, this same channel, the same connection at 9 a.m. Signing off, my name is Sharando Farrell. I look forward to spending time with you again tomorrow. Have a good evening.